Hey, what's up? It's Arminder from the Rum Revival. I have a new Indian rum right here. This is Bela from Amrut Distilleries. Now, you might be familiar with Amrut because they're primarily known for producing single malt whiskeys, but they also make rum under the Amrut and Old Port brands. Here in the States, you might have seen their two Indies release. That's actually a blend of rums from Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados, and India. But this is full-blown Indian. Coincidentally, full-blown Indian is what they used to call me in high school. And that is a very dumb joke. Now, what makes this rum notable is that instead of cane juice or molasses, it's made from jaggery, a form of solidified, unrefined sugar that's used in South Asian cooking. It's very similar to panela or piloncillo that's found throughout Latin America. Think of jaggery as a step or two before molasses. With molasses, you've heated and reduced down cane juice until it becomes a very thick syrup and sugar crystals are formed. You then separate out the crystals from the syrup, and what's remaining is your molasses. But with jaggery, as you've reduced down the cane juice and sugar crystals are formed, you don't separate out the crystals. Instead, you let the whole thing cool down. And as it's cooling down, it becomes a soft, pliable solid that you can kind of shape into a ball or put into a brick or cone mold. And then, when it completely cools down, it becomes a solid. So how do you make a rum with a solid? Well, in the case of Bela here, Amrut makes it at their distillery in Bangalore. What they do is they mix the jaggery with some water to turn it back into a liquid, and then in the case of this rum, it's fermented and pot distilled. It's aged 6 years in ex-bourbon casks and bottled at 46% ABV and retails for around $85. Now the question that I had was, are rums made from jaggery like a whole different branch of the rum family tree, like in terms of what they taste like? You know, generally speaking, we think of molasses rums and cane juice rums, depending on how they're made. We think of those two types of rums like as tasting very different. You know, you get a lot of green grass and vegetal notes with the ones that are made from cane juice, and molasses rums don't taste like that. So then, is a rum made with jaggery like a whole different sensory experience on your palate? Is it like a completely different flavor profile? Let's give it a try and find out. So I get a little bit of sweetness. It's not cane sweetness. It kind of really evokes for me sugar and butter. But there's also this kind of earthy, dusty aroma. It's a little bit like a spice-driven, earthy dustiness. But what I also get, especially initially on the aroma, is the note of like Scotch or maybe like Irish whiskey. Not like a peated Scotch, but more of a everyday approachable Scotch, I guess, if that's a thing. But sometimes it's punctuated with that dusty, earthy, kind of savory spice note. Intriguing and interesting aroma, but let's give it a taste. Cheers. So, I'm gonna pause on what I immediately think it tastes like, because it's very specific. But what I'm getting kind of on the back half, and what I actually initially kind of locked onto when I first cracked this rum open was more of that kind of earthy, dusty quality that I got on the aroma. Kind of like a earthy spice, a dusty kind of spice, like the taste of turmeric. Yeah, it kind of is what it reminds me of. It's not a full-on spice bomb. It's not that, but it just evokes some of that. And that's interesting, and I was really, initially when I cracked this open, I was kind of really obsessed with those notes. But then, at some point, I started drinking more and more of this, and now the primary thing that it frankly just tastes like and reminds me of is Scotch or Irish whiskey. I got it on the aroma, and I'm getting it a lot on the palate. If you gave this to me blind, I think I would 100% think it was a Scotch or a whiskey of some kind. A easy, approachable, sippable Scotch. You know, again, no peat or anything like that. Now, that is interesting and unique for sure, but for me, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Scotch. Like, it's just not a flavor profile that I enjoy. So having that in my rum is not something I get all that excited about. And because of that, it's not as satisfying as a rum. I think it's interesting as a spirit, sure, but as a rum, it's not scratching a certain kind of rum itch for me. Because if I want that flavor profile, I think I would just drink Scotch. But that's not to say this isn't well-made. This is well-made rum, you know, that tastes like Scotch. Now, ultimately, to answer my question of if a jaggery rum is like a whole different part of the rum family tree, well, to be honest, I don't really have an answer, right? Because just one rum is probably not enough of a data point to make a grand statement about all jaggery-based rums. But I will say it definitely doesn't taste like a cane juice rum. There's really, to me at least, I'm not getting a lot of that vegetal green, grassy, herbaceous quality. None of that. Maybe it hews a little closer to the molasses side of things, but then like it tastes so much like scotch. So that's kind of throwing me off. So it's muddled, right? I'd need to try a bunch of them to kind of maybe be able to kind of have a better summation. Now it actually doesn't say it on the label here, but Amrut, in their marketing of this rum, have kind of positioned it as India's first 100% Jaggery rum. Now that may or may not be true. I'm not quite sure. There's like another Indian rum also sort of making that claim. So, don't quote me on any of that. But it did get me thinking about another rum from India that also is making some big claims. And that would be the Camikara 12-year. Now this rum has been out for about 2 years, and on the label here it says, first Indian pure cane juice rum. And if we're looking at the label here, it's also bottled at 50% ABV. When I saw this announced 2 years ago, I was very, very excited. I love cane juice rums, and to try one from a region that I haven't had one before, and it was higher in proof, yeah, you bet your ass I was totally gonna buy it, and I did, and I tried it, and I bounced off it so hard. I did not like this rum. It basically tasted like Red Hot, those cinnamon candies, or like Big Red gum. There was just this cinnamon and like dry hay note that I absolutely could not stand. Now, part of my disappointment with this rum was that it didn't really taste like cane juice distillate. Like it was all wood all the time. So what I did was I put this rum away. I was disappointed in it and I kind of put it away and forgot about it. That was until the Bella came out and I started drinking this rum, and it made me start thinking of the Camikara. So what I did, of course, was find the Camikara. I wasn't quite sure where I'd put it, but I eventually found it, and I started drinking it again. And I realized, I'd always wanted to do a review on this, but I never did, and what better opportunity than now? So let's kind of get into this one. So this is made by Piccadily Distilleries in northern India. They have 3 distilleries across the states of Punjab and Haryana. Now, like Amrut, they mostly make whiskey. Specifically, they make Indri single malt whiskey and Whistler blended malt whiskey, and this, of course, is their big play in the rum space. As I've mentioned, this is made from the juice of locally sourced sugarcane. It's pot distilled and aged 12 years in the hot-ass climate of India. And it's bottled at 50% ABV. Let's give it a taste. Okay. Real talk, I was not a fan of the aroma when I first cracked this open a couple years back, and I'm still not a fan of the aroma. It honestly just smells like a box of crayons, like moldy crayons. It's not good, at least in my opinion. I've read other reviews where people describe all these fruit notes on the aroma, and I believe that they're getting that, but I can't get past the aroma of crayons. And look, I like to smell some weird shit in my rum, but for some reason, I really bounce off that crayon note. But let's give it a taste. Cheers. So here's the thing. All that big red hot note that I was describing earlier, I don't really get that anymore. Now I'm getting like this big pop of citrus. There's this nice note of vanilla. Yeah, there's some cinnamon, but there's also like some chocolate notes. And as I'm looking at the teleprompter, it says Tabasco, but I'm pretty sure I meant to say tobacco because this doesn't taste like hot sauce. I'm perceiving certain like aspects of that earthy, dusty kind of spice note that I got in the Amrut rum. I'm kind of sort of getting something similar to that here as well. It's nice. It kind of helps balance out the lushness, the oak and the vanilla and the chocolate. There's a lush kind of Moorish quality to this. And it's just all the kind of nice, enjoyable elements of like oak flavor and of vanilla. It's all there. That cinnamon provides a nice accent, but it's not this dominant, like artificial candied note anymore. Maybe it was just the fact that, this has been open now for that span of time, and the kind of air that's been in here has kind of helped open up the rum. Or maybe in that span of time, my palate's changed, right? And maybe I'm perceiving things now that I wouldn't have 2 years ago because of that. Now, is there potentially some added sugar in this rum? Well, Lance over at the Lone Canner did a hydrometer test, and according to him, it might have something like 12 grams of added sugar per liter. Now, that doesn't really bother me, and it doesn't really affect what I think of the taste. Would I like that they have disclosed that? Sure, of course. Speaking of Lance, I'm going to link down in the description below his review of this rum because he really dives into it and also provides like a lot of detail. And I'm also going to link to a page that he has all of his reviews and writings on Indian rum. It has lots of background and history and context there that I think is pretty good reading. You should always be reading Lance. If you're not reading Lance, go read his stuff. You know, it's kind of funny to me that these kind of rums kind of started on opposite ends. The Camikara I tried and I immediately disliked and bounced right off of it. The Bella I tried and I was pretty wowed by that dusty note, right? However, over the last month or so, kind of my opinion and estimation of it's kind of gone down, and my opinion of the Camikara has gone up and up and up, and now maybe they're sort of kind of in the middle, sort of. I guess I'm not really saying like one is necessarily better than the other. They're both kind of doing two different things. And there is space for both. It's not like you just need one Indian rum in your collection to kind of tick off a box. But if I had to choose, I'm personally going to go with the Camikara. But ultimately, I think it's great that we're getting well-made, quality rums from India that make for good sipping experiences. Now that's not me putting down rums like Old Monk or Old Port. They've got their place. Mostly mixed up with some thumbs up, cola. That's just a regional reference. You either know it or you don't. Now both of these rums make me hopeful and excited for the future of rum coming out of India. And hopefully maybe all of South Asia, right? Like why not Sri Lankan rum? Why not Pakistani rum? You know, give me all of that. And hey, if you're watching this from India right now and you think I got it completely wrong and Old Monk is the best Indian rum, then please leave a comment down below and let me know. All right, so that's it for me in this video. Check out my Patreon page if you want to support this channel. Catch y'all next time. Peace.